Let's begin with a round of 9 breathing. Now let your breath be natural. Relax your body from head to toes, releasing any tension, finding a posture of stillness, allowing your mind to rest in the present without concerns. Set our motivation for this practice for today. For the end of the year. Make your motivation meaningful and include other beings. Now, let's count 21 breaths to enter a state of relaxation, stability, and vigilance. With each out breath, relaxing deeper and deeper. With each in-breath, waking up, increasing that vividness, that interest in the present moment. Now release the counting and become aware of all the sensations in your body. Attend to mental events too. Become aware of sounds. Sounds of the environment, sounds of your body, of your breath. Open your eyes with your eyelids and forehead relaxed. Notice visual objects that appear in front of you. Notice how there are phenomena appearing to the 5 sensory fields and the mental field. Do they appear to be happening simultaneously? Let your attention go from one object to another, from one field to another. Sensations, sounds, smells, colors. What other perceptions are appearing to your awareness? If there are thoughts appearing, notice how these are mental events too. These are perceptions of the mind. If there are emotions, memories, and now let's investigate all these phenomena. First, notice if they are permanent or impermanent. Are they static, unchanging, or they are arising and passing? Arising, dwelling for a moment, or lingering, and then dissolving. Do not label or analyze, just watch directly what is appearing to your experience. Once you gain conviction or an answer to this question. Let's move to the next one. Are the objects appearing to consciousness intrinsically sources of pain or pleasure? Watch closely. Do these phenomena arise from previous causes and conditions? Now ask, are they I? Are they me? Are they mine? Do they have an owner or not? Do these phenomena have parts? Investigate each part. Does each part has parts too? Investigate the beginning, the middle, and the end. The top, the bottom, and the sides. Do they arise independent of conceptual designation? That is, the label we put to the collection of parts. Can you find a self in each of these parts? Or do that self dissolves as soon as you look into its parts? All phenomena come from the mind. Who is perceiving these phenomena? Look for the perceiver. Who is the I? Is it another label upon a transitory collection of parts? Does it have color, shape, attributes? Rest in any understanding you gained from this meditation. Just rest. Let's finish dedicating the merit of this practice so that we can keep gaining insight into the nature of all phenomena, developing wisdom, and achieve realization of emptiness. May we be completely free of ignorance and the causes of suffering. And may we cultivate the causes for enlightenment, liberation, happiness, and help other beings realize their nature too. And stretch a little bit and come back. This is the fourth application of mindfulness. We've already done the 4 practices, and as you can see, this one includes all the others. Now we are opening to all perceptions, but it's not that meditation we did at the beginning that we call choiceless awareness, where you let your mind wander and go to one sensation, one sound, and just be like dogs. You see, dogs are practicing choiceless awareness very well. They're very alert, they're very present, and there's a sound, and their attention immediately goes to the sound, the smell, or what's going on. They're usually more present than us. Yet, if we just do that choiceless awareness, without any investigation, without any discernment, then it can't be deeply transformative, because we're just still perceiving ourselves as a subject, perceiving an object that seems to be external, that seems to be unchanging, that seems to be a true source of happiness or pain, that seems to be intrinsically real from its own side, without depending on causes and conditions. Yet when we investigate, we see that things are not as we perceive. Appearances deceive us continuously, or we are deceived. So when we practice the fourth application of mindfulness, we are applying discernment, not only attention, but discernment, investigation. How do these things exist in relation with other things, right? So when we speak of emptiness, we refer to the emptiness of self, emptiness of intrinsic reality, not meaning that they don't exist at all. So the other side of the coin from emptiness is dependent origination. Patita Samutpada is called. And is these two, dependent origination and emptiness, what every phenomena appearing in reality is determined by. So if we only see the emptiness, if we only focus on that they are emptiness, there is no self, because we take the parts and then those parts have other parts. And then when we see, we could go to the atoms, and they're subatomic particles, and subatomic particles have also parts, until you have space, right? But if we only go there, we can go to an extreme and not see the whole picture. And if we only go to the other extreme, where we are seeing cause and effect, and reifying matter, and thinking that it's really existent out there intrinsically, and that there must be a particle that is constituting the whole universe, as we used to think, right? That there was an atom, that it was indivisible. Yet, now with quantum physics, they discovered that it's not like that. There's just a field of potentiality, of probability, right? Yet, if we join these two, the ultimate reality that everything is empty, and the relative reality that everything exists as an interdependent phenomena arising from causes and conditions, giving rise to other causes and conditions, and that we, our bodies, our minds, are part of that network of interdependence. So phenomena are arising, and we are changing independence of these phenomena. And those phenomena are changing independence of us too. So when we see a rainy day, we can perceive it as, it's a very sad day. I feel sad because the environment is a sad environment. You perceive it as sad or depressing, and then you feel sad that day. another day is sunny and you think it's coming from the outside and you're perceiving it as a good day. But another person can perceive the opposite. So we're always interpreting that reality that arises to our perception and labeling according to a network of factors. Maybe how we're feeling today or how we feel might affect our experience of interaction with others. For example, we wake up and we feel good, but then we hit our toe with the bed, and then we get very angry. So we come out of our house feeling angry, maybe in a rush because we're late, and then we crash with a car with someone else. And then we come out and we already have a pre-existing condition, and we trigger anger very fast because we already were angry with the bed before. So now we get angry with that person that crashed our car. But maybe another day you wake up and you feel good, you have enough time to drink your coffee, you leave your house with time in advance, and you're feeling very positive that day, and then a person crashes your car, and you react with patience and understanding of the situation. And it doesn't trigger the same emotions, right? So all the network of causes and conditions are constantly determining also how, not determining, but affect how we decide to interpret our reality, how we label things as pleasurable, displeasurable, or neutral. Not only that, but also our conditioning, our education, our society, right? I don't know in your countries, but I know, for example, in Mexico, in the US, and other places, there was, in the past, our grandpas and grandmothers would see the celebrities on the TV, in the movies, and if a woman were a little, what we consider now a little fat, they were beautiful. And if they were what we consider now beautiful, they were too skinny, anorexic, right? But now our society is labeling what is our ideals of beauty as a woman that is extremely thin, and we perceive someone maybe healthier in the body, in the way of eating, as someone fat. So it's strange how we think that all that is conditioning our perception, right? And then you have this woman, these models, eating very little and starving and suffering bulimia, anorexia, just to keep up with that image we've fabricated. Well, now I think it's starting to change, but there's conditioning for everything, culturally, how we think about the people from another country. And we say, oh, those people are very arrogant, or these people are, and we label a whole society. We think this about the French, this about the Spanish, this about the Americans. We have our labels, and those labels and conditionings make us perceive that as if it was really out there, and if it really comes from the object, not from our conditioning, our upbringing, all the ideas, not only we've built up, but that have been influenced upon us from our society, education, family, gender. We might have these labels about women or men, or now we have more labels, right? So there's nothing wrong with having a relative label to refer to a collection of parts and be able to communicate with language. Yet, we have to dissolve the reification of the label in order to see reality as it is. When we hold on too strongly to those labels as if they were not only a label, a conceptual label, but a real self existing out there, then is when we start dividing reality and making those cookies, cutting reality into pieces and thinking we are over here and those things and people and objects are over there. So by doing this meditation, we start investigating reality as it is and dissolving the ignorance and the confusion that has kept us in that cyclic existence of recurrent suffering and pain and birth, age, illness, and death. So there's in the sutras a story of a man called Bahia, and I think he was a monk, and he had very little dust in his eyes, for saying away, because he was ready. He had cultivated the seeds of the practice. Maybe in previous lives, he had practiced a lot. He had deep understanding. So he came to the Buddha and for a teaching, and the Buddha told him a very small teaching, and he became liberated in that very moment. So he told him, Bahia, in the sin, there is only the sin. In the hurt, there's only the hurt. In the field, there's only what you feel, right? And he became an arhat right there. He achieved realization of emptiness just by hearing that. And that was because all the causes and conditions came together to that moment, right? But he had lifetimes of practice, and he was ripe and ready in that moment to get it, to get the point. But for most of us, it doesn't happen like that. So we have to do study, reflection, and meditation. Keep investigating, keep analyzing, keep understanding this. And there's different ways. In the Gelugpa tradition, there is a lot of study, debate. You've seen in the monasteries the debate where one monk, they do this practice, some part of their routine in the day, they go to a courtyard and then they sit monk in front of monk, and one of them asks a question to the other one, and the other one has to reply, right? But there's a lot of logical debate going on there, and then they switch places. Also, they have these examinations after years of study and debate. They are put into scrutiny by the whole community, and they have to debate publicly in front of all. And eventually they get the Geshe degree, which is like a PhD in Buddhist philosophy, right? After many years of study. So that's one approach, but you can also get there through meditation and direct observation. And so there's a lot of meditations that fall into this category of vipashyana meditations, where you start getting that understanding not so much through logic, but through seeing it directly, seeing that things are impermanent, changing, and all this, that they have these three marks or characteristics of existence. And so the thing is, if you just understand it rationally or practice a little bit, and then the rest of your day, you are, you understand that during a reflection in the morning, and the rest of the day you are engaging with all these phenomena as if they really exist out there, independent of your perception, independent of causes and conditions, and believing that everything out there is really existing out there. It's like knowing something and then forgetting it and getting caught up in the dream. It's like being lucid for a moment in the dream, knowing that it's a dream, and the next moment you lose the lucidity and you're engaged into the appearances and you're suffering because what is happening in the dream, you're totally caught up. And then again, for a moment, you gain lucidity. And this happens when you practice dream yoga. Like, it's not like you're lucid all the time, always. Sometimes you lose that lucidity in the dream because the appearances are so overwhelmingly vivid and appear to be real that you're caught up in the dream, right? So through this practice, we start gaining more and more insights into reality and ourselves and how we exist independent of other phenomena, right? So this practice can be applied not only in the cushion, anywhere. When you walk, when you eat, when you interact with other people. Now, all these practices, the 4 applications of mindfulness, is interesting that you can apply them to other people too. So what do we do when we are in a conversation with someone? We start believing the thoughts that arise due to our conditioning. So we see a person, not only we immediately label them and think that we know everything about them, right? We make a lot of assumptions, like, I know this person is like this, that, or where it's coming from, right? But yet we know just maybe a fragment of them, the appearance that is coming to us in that very moment of their existence, and we don't know all their past, we don't know their connections, we don't know how they're feeling today, we don't know if they had a problem or a difficult lifestyle, we don't know much about them, right? But we start labeling and interpreting based on our previous conditioning. But if we dissolve those labels and are fully present with the person and just experiencing them as they are arising moment to moment, and just noticing, in the scene, there's just the scene, in the heart, there's just the heart. There's no self-seeing. There's only the appearance arising and dissolving, right? So we observe the person and we investigate. We might not perceive their physical sensations. We can't experience what they're feeling, but we can have visual perceptions of them. We can hear their voice. We can see their body language. We can perceive a lot of things directly. And if we do this investigation, just being fully present with what is arising, it's like a matrix of parts that we label as you, or he or she, or with a name, right? But what is appearing independence of that name? They're changing. Everything in them is changing too. And we cannot find the self there, right? So it's interesting when you switch, you're in a conversation with someone, and instead of judging them, you just observe, and you move your attention to them and to you. You observe what's going on in your body and your mind, and how their words give, in this interdependence, give rise or trigger maybe some thoughts or emotions, and how your words trigger some facial expressions on them. And so we are constantly interacting. We are interdependent with others. That's why our actions affect others, can harm or can benefit them. That's why we can help others be free too, because we are not as separated as we think. You can also question, where do I finish and where do the other one begins, right? We're kind of breathing the same air. We are interacting and affecting and transforming each other as we interact. So where are the boundaries? Where does my mind finish and where does your mind begins? Right? And so these questions help you start seeing that the reality that appears is not really as we thought it was. So the more present we are, the more we can see reality as it is, because if we're not present, if we're distracted, if we're lost in that discursivity, that internal chit-chat, we're missing 90% of what is going on. We're just creating our own delusion and then reifying it and suffering because of believing those false appearances, right? So sometimes it's easier to focus on one of the 4 applications of mindfulness and just be with the sensations in the body investigating. Sometimes just with the mind. Sometimes just focus on the feelings. But whenever you can, open your senses to include all phenomena, because then is when you start getting more insights and more understanding of all that interdependence of causes and conditions that are constantly in a constant flux of arising, dissolving, giving rise to new causes and conditions, right? But everything is like a rainbow. When we see a rainbow from the distance, it seems, we see it with our eyes, it seems to be there. We see the colors, we see the shape of the rainbow. But we know it's just an appearance. And that is appearing depending on many conditions like the sun, the rain, the distance from which we are standing, because if we start coming closer trying to grab the rainbow, somehow it vanishes. We cannot find it, we cannot grab it, we cannot pinpoint to it, yet we can perceive it. So is it real or not? Well, it's relatively real. It's there, we're seeing it, we're perceiving it. Yet when the causes and conditions dissolve, they're not there, the rainbow dissolves. So it was never there in the first place, or it's not intrinsically real from its own side. Yet we think that this building and our bodies are different than rainbows, that they are really existing, not like the rainbow. But every phenomena is a rainbow. Everything we perceive is a rainbow.
But if there's a dog, it's a dog. Isn't it?
Yes, relatively, there's a dog. It's appearing to us as a dog. We perceive it, we see it, we hear it, right? But when you try to look, where is the dog? Is it on the ears? Is it on the legs? Is it on... Where is...
Combination.
You think, well, maybe it's the combination of the parts, right? But if you were to separate those parts, you have all the parts, no one is missing, and you put them here, but they are disorganized. You have the legs here, the head here. Do you still have a dog?
No, because it's separated, but when it's together, it's a dog.
So that's what we think, right? If they're together, there is a dog. So they need to be those conditions, that those parts are together in order to have this label, dog.
But if they're not together, then it's a dead dog. It's still a dog.
But they're not together, is it still a dog?
Yeah, it's a dead dog.
Now the label changes slightly, right? Now it's a dead dog, not a dog anymore, not a dog that is alive. So the thing is, the moment those parts and conditions and our perception of that, because maybe if you ask another dog, is that a dog? Maybe they don't have that label, dog. For them, dog doesn't mean anything, right? So when we have those conditions together, those parts together, and our language, our labeling, because if you ask someone that doesn't speak English, that's a dog, they would say, no. Someone in Spanish would say, that's a perro, right? So we have even different names and labels. So when you try to find that thing we label dog, it's just a label that we put upon a collection of parts, right? But when you look into each of these parts, you cannot find one separate part that is unchanging, that is the self, that is the dog, independent of causes and conditions, independent of its parts, and independent of our label. There is no dog independent of these things. So the moment one of these conditions is not there, like our perception or our label, or one of the parts, or many of the parts, when the conditions are not together, the dog dissolves. That appearance of having a dog just dissolves. So it's difficult to get to that understanding. It's very difficult because appearances are there. So that's why we investigate through debate, through analysis, through reading, through exposing ourselves to teachings about this again and again, and through looking and observing. So I'm not asking you to believe it, but the more you investigate these teachings and look for yourself and meditate, the more it makes sense. And the Madhyamaka philosophy, which is the middle way, the path of the middle way, it tells us that the way to get there, to that understanding, is to avoid extremes. So that's difficult because our mind wants to hold onto one or the other extreme. It exists or it doesn't exist. It's real or it's not real. And getting to the middle point is difficult because we are used and we want to go to one extreme or the other. So we investigate from one side, from the side of emptiness, and then we investigate from the side of dependent origination. And by switching, we will reach eventually a point where we say, okay, it's not there, but it's there, kind of. But then we can fall into other extremes that are more subtle. So we start going to that middle point of understanding that things exist relatively. independence of causes and conditions, in a constant state of flux. But ultimately, they don't exist as an independent, separate self. So slowly we will get there, and we will also understand how they arise independent of our conceptual designation, right? There's an example of one of my teachers of like if you were to throw a bottle of Coca-Cola, I just say bottle of Coca-Cola and you have the image in your mind because we've been exposed to that image so many times in the advertising that it just appears like something real, that we all agree in our society that that's a bottle of Coca-Cola if we were to have one here, right? But if you were to throw that bottle of Coca-Cola from an airplane into a place where there is a tribe that hasn't been ever exposed to our civilization, which there are still some of these communities, right? And you throw the bottle of Coca-Cola, and they find that strange object. They might think, oh, this object, it can be like a tool I can use for, I don't know, for heating things or for maybe for doing some cooking. Or they will designate that object in their own, based on their own conditioning and their own language and their own way of perceiving reality. So for them, the bottle of Coca-Cola never existed. And for them, it doesn't need to be a bottle. Like, they might use it upside down, what for us is upside down, right? Or in many different ways. But for them, the concept bottle of Coca-Cola is never existed. So they don't perceive a bottle of Coca-Cola, right?
There is a movie about that, actually, you know?
I think there is, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
God must be crazy.
God must be crazy, yes, yes.
Okay,
Literally
good. God
about
must be
this.
crazy. Yeah, I had that kind of feeling, yeah. So, sometimes there are things that are appearing, but we don't see them, we don't perceive them, because we are not aware of them, because we don't have a label to designate them. That's also interesting. For example, the people in the North Pole, the Eskimo, how do you say Eskimales? Eskimos. So they have, like, I don't know, a lot of labels to designate different kinds of snow. And also based on the texture and the shade of the snow and many factors, right? But we might be there and just see one type of snow. We just say snow, right? And for us, it's all the same. We don't perceive those subtleties. We don't see all those types of snow. And we might be standing next to them and they say, look, this is this kind of snow, this kind of snow. But we don't see that, right? Or, for example, I'm a painter. So as you develop to perceive colors and shades of different, gradation of colors, and you even can buy different paints of green, that you have emerald green and you have sage green, and you have like infinite number. Well, not infinite, but you have a lot of different greens to paint with, right? So when you're a painter, for example, are looking at the trees, and you're not so concerned about the label tree, but about how are you going to paint that. So you start seeing, I don't know, like 100 different greens in the same little area. But someone that hasn't trained their eye to see all and differentiate all those greens don't have those labels, and would look and say, it's all green, right? Maybe they have 3 labels: dark green, light green, and medium green, or something. But they can't perceive all those different greens. But if I were to talk with a painter and I say, oh, do you perceive that that leaf? It has a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red and a little bit of sepia. And the other painter, we would be able to talk about that. And maybe another person would say, these guys are crazy. What are they talking about? I don't see that. I don't even have those labels, right? And this happens with any other field. We develop a language to communicate all those perceptions, and we label things in order to communicate. But it's not that these labels are pointing to something that is intrinsically real out there. We're choosing to perceive reality in that way. Yeah?
The tree doesn't know it has so many colors.
Maybe there's no color out there, right? The color is arising in our minds, in our perception, in our visual perception, right? There is, we know by science that the color is not in our brain. We cannot find it in the brain. We cannot find it in the object, right? We cannot find it in the eye. So where is the color? It's just appearance in our mind. It's a rainbow appearing and dissolving, and it's not really out there.
Even the light. They found that even the light from the basically sun doesn't really emit light. Light is only we, through our consciousness, we perceive it as light. It doesn't have any inherent illumination in it, for example.
Yeah, and science is all focusing finding what is really out there, independent of our perceptions, independent of our labels, independent of our means of measurement. But we will never know if there's something out there, because as soon as you perceive it, you're already labeling and interacting and entering into interdependence with that phenomena, and the only way you can perceive it is because it's arising in the space of your mind, in your field of perception. So the same object can be perceived different by a human being, by a dog that we know they perceive, I think, in 2 colors, or they don't have so much...
Brown.
Brown.
Yeah. She's a brown.
And a fly, for example, we know that they perceive things like hexagons, like many repeated images, right? So for each one of those beings, the appearance of this bowl will be a different appearance. So which one is the real one? The one we perceive as humans, or the one the dog is perceiving, or the one the fly is perceiving? Which one is the real appearance out there? Well, according to Buddhist philosophy, there is nothing out there. And that's kind of interesting, right, if we reflect on it. So, do you have any questions? I bet you have a lot of questions, but just put them out there. Just don't get overwhelmed trying to understand this right now all at once, but just meditate. Yeah?
Is there a kind of question catalog or so you're using, or of which you know, which is used to just, I don't know, you can also do it as a play, right? So walking around outside and going through the questions, is it a real tree? No, it's not a real tree. So do you know a kind of checklist type of question catalog to play on emptiness?
Well, there are many texts that talk about how to investigate reality, but the main questions are these: the questions of the three marks. Is this impermanent? Is this a true cause of source of happiness and pain? Is this I, me, mine? Does it have a self? Right? And by investigating, and then who is perceiving? You can add that one. Who is the perceiver? Who is watching? By doing those simple questions, you can start getting all the answers. But if you want to know more about how to investigate the emptiness of phenomena, you can look for Jeffrey Hopkins. He's a Western Buddhologist, but a good practitioner too, who has written with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and other authors a lot about emptiness. He has a book called Meditations on Emptiness, and he was one of the first teachers of teaching in academia Buddhist studies and bringing all that understanding to the West, right? And training teachers like, I think he was teacher of Robert Thurman and other like scholars. He was one of the first to bring teachings on emptiness and philosophy to the West. So his books and his teachings that you can find online are a reliable source. And he's kind of like the expert on emptiness. And then in the FPMT, they have a lot of courses on philosophy. If you're going to study some Madhyamaka philosophy, I studied Madhyamaka in the FPMT and also in Rangyung Geshe Institute, the Chokyam Rinpoche's Shedra, the institute in Nepal. And they have very interesting courses about Madhyamaka philosophy and how to question and how to do the logical analysis and going into all the reasoning and specific questions you can do. So it's interesting if you want to investigate. But I would say you can do your own set of questions too. It would be nice to have an app, right? And you do your daily checklist. But if you just keep it simple, these basic questions of investigating the three marks of existence, then you just have a set of 3 or 4 questions that you can pose to all phenomena in reality. Yes?
So, for me anyway, one interesting pointer to the insubstantiality of things are the marks that yogis have left, enlightened yogis, such as near Parping in Nepal, there is a handprint at the Rangjung Dolma cave. You may have seen yourselves.
Yeah, Padmasambhava's mark in the Ashura cave.
Are there any such marks around here that we can see? Near Dharamsala or up in the hills that you know of?
The closest place that comes to my mind right now would be in Tsopema. Tsopema is a very special place. It's it's not so close, maybe like 3-4 hours from here, in the lake of Rewalsar. Around this lake, there is some monasteries, and uphill, there's a community of caves, like 90 caves or something. And the practitioners there are mainly nuns. There's also some male yogis there. They are around these caves where Padmasambhava meditated, and Mandarava also, she meditated there. And they're very interesting places to meditate in. They have some of these marks. In Sopema, in the village down around the lake, there is a cave there that is kind of difficult to find and access, but if you ask, you can find it. So you come into this alley, into like next to these buildings. You don't even imagine there's a cave right there. So you enter into this little alley and go into a place that has a cave, and there are some imprints that Padmasambhava and Mandarava left on the rock. So these very realized yogis, they are lucid in the dream, in the waking reality, and are able to transform matter. So some of these marks have been left in rocks like footprints or handprints or different signs that during their meditations and realizations were imprinted in the place. Like they were walking and the rock was soft, right? So that's a very special place to visit. Last retreat I gave here, we went on a pilgrimage to Sopema. We stayed there for a few days, and we went to meditate in these caves. And yeah, it's amazing place. The first time I was there, Lama Wandor was still alive. He was the abbot of this community. And it's not really a monastery, it's a place of yogis, of practitioners. And he was the main teacher there. And he told us that, he said, I wasn't born with realizations. I was not a tulku, a recognized. I was just like a very ordinary person. But I came here and I meditated for, I don't know if 20 years or something, in the caves of Padmasambhava. And he said, I did the work like the Buddha. Like I had to do all the work myself. I had no privilege. And then after he achieved realization, he started, the community just formed around him. Practitioners start coming, but somehow it became a practitioner, a community of female practitioners. So I met some of the nuns there and went into their caves. And one of my friends got to, because there's a waiting list, like the caves are taken. But he managed to get an empty cave and meditated there for some years. And when I went to visit his cave, so it's a very interesting place, and of course, when you meditate in Padmasambhava's cave, where he achieved realizations, there is this understanding that the place is kind of filled with blessings and with some interesting effects happen to your mind as you are in that place. And of course, if you have openness and some devotion, then more, right? You connect with that aspect of primordial reality.